he was 17. His career was 8 months long. And people still play his music. They come up and tell me they love the movie. They love his music. They love to see me performing. You know, they say I'm as close as they're going to get.
If someone really wants to understand what real friendship is, then one must learn about Ritchie Valens. One of his childhood friends passed, and Ritchie launched a song in his memory. And this is one sign of Ritchie's humbleness. His sister finally shared such signs of humbleness and some rumors of Ritchie's life. So let's try to understand in the next few minutes. People around the world know him as Ritchie Valens. He was born on May 13, 1941, in Pacoima, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, California, in the San Fernando Valley. He had a Mexican father named Joseph Valenzuela and a Mexican mother named Concepcion Concha Reyes. Ritchie grew up in a simple home, but he was exposed to a lot of different cultures that would have an impact on his singing career. His family loved music and played a lot of different kinds for him, from traditional Mexican mariachi to rhythm and blues. This made him love music from a very young age. There were some hard times in Ritchie's life. They split up when he was 3 years old, and he moved in with his dad, Steve, in a small house in Pacoima. Steve saw Ritchie's musical ability early on and gave him a guitar when he showed interest in making instruments out of things around the house. This encouraged Ritchie to learn more about music. This helped make Ritchie love music for the rest of his life. Poor Ritchie. His father, Steve, died of diabetes when he was only 10 years old, cutting his father's impact short. After this loss, Ritchie moved back in with his mother and her children from past relationships. These included his half-brother Robert, another brother named Bob Morales, and two younger sisters named Connie and Irma. As a child, Ritchie struggled with his identity. He was Mexican, but he didn't speak Spanish very well. He felt out of place with his friends because they teased him for having lighter skin and not speaking Spanish well. Even so, he was a quiet, nice boy who found comfort in music. He went to Pacoima Junior High School and would bring his guitar to lunchtime to play for his friends. His skills were recognized, and because he sang Little Richard songs, his classmates affectionately called him the Little Richard of the San Fernando Valley. Ritchie joined a local band called the Silhouettes when he was 16 years old. This is where he started to improve his guitar and singing skills. His mother was very important to his industry because she used the rent money to rent out local halls for concerts. Ritchie gained confidence and live experience through these shows. Even with these problems, Ritchie's love for music grew. He kept getting better as an artist all through high school, and a music producer named Bob Keane became interested in him. Keane would later help him start his business. Ritchie's early life set the stage for a groundbreaking career in rock music that made him one of the first Latino stars to work in that genre. Ritchie Valens had a strong will and a lot of ability. He overcame personal problems in society to become an important figure in American music history before he died too soon at the age of 17. As talented as Ritchie Valens was, his road to fame wasn't just smooth. It was also paved with emotional support, personal challenges, and the weight of loss. Ritchie grew up in a home that valued music, and his mother, Concepcion, helped him follow his dreams by noticing his talent early on. Even though they didn't have much money, she supported his dreams and often gave up her own wants so he could follow his musical goals. It was easy for Ritchie to be creative in this supportive setting, but it also had its own problems. Ritchie's biggest problem was that he had to learn how to play the guitar. Being left-handed in a world full of right-handed tools was hard in its own way. Ritchie had to change because most guitars were made for right-handed players. He didn't wait for a left-handed guitar. Instead, he learned to play a right-handed one, which forced him to come up with a unique way to play. This showed that he was dedicated to music and wouldn't let anything get in the way of his goals. Even with these problems, Ritchie's natural interest in music showed through. He spent a lot of time practicing, and he often used a used guitar that he had fixed up in the school woodshop. Because he worked hard, he became good at many styles, combining traditional Mexican sounds with new rock and roll inspirations. His music would later become known for its ability to change and adapt. There were also artists Ritchie looked up to who influenced his own songs. The energetic performances of Little Richard really moved him. The singer's flashy style and strong voice will stay with him forever. You can hear this impact in Ritchie's lively performances and singing style. Also, the help from local musicians was very important. Ritchie was in a lot of bands as a teenager, and the Silhouettes was the real stage, where he improved his playing and singing skills. These activities not only gave him great chances to perform, but they also helped him make contacts in the music world that were very important to his job later on. In a terrible accident near Ritchie's school, on January 31st, 1957, his best friend Terry died. On January 31st, 1957, teacher John Buchanan started recording the graduation program for 800 students at Pacoima Junior High School in the San Fernando Valley. After about 10 minutes, an F-89 jet crashed into a new DC-7 in the sky above the nearby San Gabriel Mountains, making both planes unmanageable. In the end, Buchanan's recording that morning caught the sound of a tragedy. Halfway through the tape, right after Linda Luttrell, the graduation speaker, says, "We have only one life to live." The DC-7 can be heard falling into the school's football pitch, which is only a few hundred feet from the auditorium. 3 Pacoima students, the pilot of the F-89, and the 4 people on board the DC-7 were killed in the crash. The pilot of the F-89 said, "Uncontrollable. We're spinning over the valley. Goodbye, everyone. We're going inside." After his jet almost hit the bigger plane head-on, the pilot of the F-89 quickly parachuted to safety on the ground. But dozens of students were hurt on the Pacoima gym field, and many of them were badly hurt. The tragedy became known across the country when the parents of the Pacoima child successfully asked officials to stop future test flights in overcrowded areas. There were a lot more people living in the San Fernando Valley in 1957 than there are now, but not nearly as many as there are now. This terrible event had a huge impact on Ritchie, and he is still dealing with sadness at such a young age. Terry's death reminded Ritchie of how fragile life is, and it made Ritchie feel like he needed to act quickly to follow his goals. He thought about how their friendship made him want to enjoy every moment all the time. Another movie, La Bamba, came out in 1987 and talked about the crash again. It was the reason why rock star and Pacoima's favorite son, Ritchie Valens, was afraid to fly. After 2 years, Valens, J.P. Big Bopper Richardson, and Buddy Holly were all killed when their light plane crashed near Clear Lake, Iowa. They were all on tour with Valens. Even though he was hurting, Ritchie put his feelings into his songs. The pain of losing Terry gave his songs more depth and helped him describe feelings that many people could relate to. Some of his songs, like Donna, which he wrote for an ex-girlfriend, were very moving and hit home with fans. One of the things that made him unique was his ability to show real feelings through music. And it looked like Ritchie Valens was about to start a musical movement that would change rock and roll for good. When he met Bob Keane, the owner of Delphi Records, his journey really began. This meeting changed Ritchie's life, taking him from performing in small towns to becoming famous across the country. Bob Keane saw one of Ritchie's shows at a small theater in San Fernando in 1958. He thought the young musician was very talented and full of energy, so he asked Ritchie to come to his home studio for a tryout. In this small room in the basement, dreams would start to come true. Ritchie was excited and worried at the same time, and his nerves showed during the audition. Keane saw his promise right away and signed him to Delphi Records on May 14th, 1958. Keane was a very important part of Ritchie's success. He told Richard Valenzuela that he should change his name to Ritchie Valens because he knew how important branding was. Keane thought that Valenzuela sounded too foreign for the general audience they were trying to reach. Ritchie reluctantly agreed because he knew that this change would help him become more accepted in the music business, which is mostly white. Ritchie got a new identity and a fresh start when he changed his name. He was getting ready to take the world stage. Ritchie's first recording session happened not long after he signed with Delphi. In May 1958, he released Come On, Let's Go, an original song co-written with Bob Keane under his real name, Bob Kuhn. This track featured Ritchie's unique blend of rock and traditional Mexican sounds, setting the stage for what would become his signature style. The song came out soon after it was recorded and became a big hit right away, making Ritchie's debut in the music business. But it was his next album that really made him famous. The double A-side single had 2 songs, Donna, a sad tune he wrote for his high school sweetheart, Donna Ludwig, and La Bamba, a rock version of a traditional Mexican folk song. Released on January 3rd, 1959, this song became an instant hit, selling over 1 million copies and earning Ritchie a gold disc from the Recording Industry Association of America. Ritchie Valens' songs hit close to home for people of all backgrounds. His genuine lyrics and lively performances made an emotional connection with people that went beyond language barriers. Many people became fans of La Bamba, which was one of the first Spanish-language songs to make it to the top of the Billboard charts. Ritchie not only made a new sound by mixing rock and roll with traditional Mexican music, but he also paved the way for other Latino artists to work in popular music. Not only was his music well known, it was also very innovative. Ritchie Valens became a source of hope and a voice for many young Latinos in America during a time when their voices were often ignored. He showed that it was possible to be proud of your background and be successful in the music business as a whole. Ritchie recorded 29 songs at Delphi Records during his short but important career. Of those, 21 were original compositions. After his death, his self-titled record, Ritchie Valens, came out in March 1959. It showed how versatile he was as an artist and had hits like Ooh, My Head and Framed. But not all of Ritchie's recordings came out while he was still alive. Many tapes were kept secret after his sad death. People who like Ritchie Valens and people who study history both talk about his lost tapes all the time. These recordings show how talented and creative he was at the start of his work. They are a sad memory of what might have been if he had lived longer to develop his artistic skills more. Ritchie Valens made a lasting mark on music history, even though he was only famous for 8 months before he died too soon at the age of 17. A boy from Pacoima who had big dreams and changed the course of rock music forever. His story is one of overcoming hardship. Many artists are still inspired by him, showing that even if you only live for a short time, you can leave a lasting mark through passion and drive. Ritchie's story isn't just about fame, it's also about heart. His songs that touched people deeply will be remembered for a long time after he died. People still listen to his songs to remember how powerful dreams can be and how creative people can be. Ritchie Valens, whose name sounds like the lively spirit of rock and roll, had a lot of success in his short life. His music not only topped the charts, but it also changed the style forever, making him a leader for Latino acts. But he did have some bad things happen in his life, and the tragic events of his death cast a long shadow over his legacy. Ritchie's first hit on the Billboard lists was Come On, Let's Go, which got to number 42 in late 1958. This was only the start. His next song, Donna, was a huge hit, going to number 2 on the charts and staying there for an amazing 23 weeks. When it came out as a double A side with La Bamba, it showed how well Ritchie could combine heartfelt feelings with catchy melodies. That song, La Bamba, was based on a traditional Mexican folk song. It reached number 22 and is now one of the most famous songs in music history. Some of Ritchie's songs that made it to the top of the Billboard Hot 100 were That's My Little Susie at number 55 and Ooh, My Head. His record with the same name came out soon after he died in January 1959 and reached number 23 on the Billboard Pop Albums chart. Ritchie's short but important career cemented his place as an important figure in rock and roll history. Ritchie Valens is mostly known for his singing work, but there were other parts of his life that showed a more complex person. Ritchie had to deal with the stresses of fame, just like many other young stars. During his short career, he was known to have been in a few relationships, but information about these relationships are still hard to find. The most famous was his connection with Donna Ludwig, who gave him the idea for his hit song, Donna. A lot of people loved their young love story, but it made Ritchie's already troubled life even worse. The sudden fame came with its own problems. Ritchie had a hard time with the demands that were put on him as a young Latino artist in a field that often looked down on people from different backgrounds. He sometimes felt anxious and unsure about his future in music because of this pressure. Even with all of these problems, he stayed dedicated to his work and kept making music that people liked. Ritchie's career ended tragically on February 3rd, 1959. That day will always be known in music history as the day the music died. Buddy Holly and J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson were also on the Winter Dance Party tour and played next to him. Problems with logistics and the harsh winter weather made the show very tiring for the performers. Tom Alsop, Buddy Holly's backup guitarist, and Ritchie won a coin toss for a seat on a small private plane after a show in Clear Lake, Iowa. This choice, which seemed harmless, would seal his fate. The plane took off from Mason City Airport just after midnight on February 3rd, but bad weather made things difficult right away. Ritchie Valens, Buddy Holly, J.P. Richardson, and pilot Roger Peterson were all killed when the plane crashed just minutes after takeoff. Reports say the plane crashed in a farm near Clear Lake, Iowa. This caused shock and sadness all over the country. Ritchie died when he was only 17 years old. Artists like Ritchie Valens' songs continue to connect with fans across generations and cultures. His unique mix of rock and native Mexican sounds paved the way for other Latino artists in rock music and other fields. La Bamba and other songs like it introduced a lot of people to Latin sounds and showed appreciation for Mexican culture at a time when it wasn't given much attention in the media. Ritchie had a huge impact on music, even though his career was short. He is known as one of the first Latino rock stars and will always be remembered in American music history. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after his death, and Billboard named him one of the most important Latino artists. Many musicians have written tributes to him and his work. The fact that Ritchie Valens' music is still praised today may be the best way to sum up his impact. The 1987 movie La Bamba, which tells the story of his life, brought his music back into the spotlight and presented it to new people. Another #1 hit was the movie's theme song, performed by Los Lobos. This showed that Ritchie's talent had not diminished over time. The tragic story of Ritchie Valens' life shows how high teenage dreams can go, and how low tragedy can go with fame. From Pacoima to becoming a rock star, his life has been full of both happiness and sadness. He was happy to make music that touched people's hearts, but sad that he lost it all too soon. His story is not just about a young man who died in a tragic way. It is also about an artist whose love of music broke down walls and encouraged many others to follow their dreams, even when things got hard. Today, as we remember Ritchie Valens, we celebrate not only his contributions to rock music, but also the spirit he embodied, which lives on and inspires people long after he died too soon. So, this was the story of a 17-year-old boy who made his name famous by his art. If you really enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe to our channel for more videos.